Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video I will show you how I manage my Linux configuration, my .files with Git, GitLab and GitHub. Git is a version control system that helps track changes in source code during software development. GitLab and GitHub are web-based platforms that provide hosting for Git repositories, enabling collaboration, issue tracking, and more. They serve as platforms for managing and sharing code among developers and teams. I use Git and GitLab to track my development of my .files and to store the configuration on a web platform, GitLab. The great thing with GitLab and GitHub is that I can share easily my configurations with you, with the Linux community. But also I can learn from thousands of Linux users from the Linux community and improve my .files over the time. In this video, I will use Git with GitLab mainly, but everything will work also in a similar way with GitHub. I will share with you the Git commands and the setup that I use every day. But there's much more to discover around Git, GitLab and GitHub. That's why I've put a lot of resources, learning resources into the video description below. And with that, let's jump in. I'm here on Qtile. And I'm currently working on some configurations. So in the configurations, will be stored in the folder .config. And here every application that you can manage with .files have here normally an own dedicated folder. And in my case, I want to change something in my Qtile. I open Qtile and then I open the config.py with vim config.py. And here I want to change something. I want to activate the margins between the windows. Let's reload the config with super control R. And then let's see if it's working. Yes, and now I have gaps between the windows. And I want to change some more. You see at the moment the bar, the Qtile standard bar is at the bottom, and I want to move it to the top and replace the bottom equals bar.bar with top equals bar.bar. Let's save it again and reload the config again, and you see the Qtile bar is now on top. Let's close the Qtile bar and move to the PyCom folder, the compositor that I'm using for running Qtile. And also here I want to do a minor change. I define a border radius of 10. Let's save it. And now you see I have rounded borders. So this looks very nice. And this is now the configuration that I want to back up, to store in a repository on GitLab or GitHub. Now I'm back on my Hyprland desktop, but of course you can proceed with Qtile directly. Important is that you have a browser. I'm here on the GitLab homepage, and you can here sign in with an existing account, or you can also create a new account. I will sign in with my existing account, and I see here all my repositories. What I want to do, I want to create a new project, a new repository for my Qtile .files. I click here on Create New Project and I give it a name. My Qtile .files is now the name of the project, and you see already that a project slug has been created, my Qtile .files, in my GitLab repository. I will start with the visibility level private. So only I can have access at the moment to this repository, and I create the project. The project is now created, including automatically generated readme.md. This is something that you can easily change later on with instructions about your repository. On GitHub, it's the similar process. Yeah, so I'm here logged in on my GitHub. I can open here my repositories I have currently one repository, but I can easily create a new one. Yeah, with the repository name my Qtile dotfiles. Yeah, it's available. It's private. I can add README and I can create the repository. And then I can clone the repository with this URL. Instead of GitLab, I can use GitHub. The rest is the same. Now I'm back on Qtile, and I will now create a folder for the repository by using Git. Let's cd into the home folder and see if Git is installed on the system. You can do this with sudo pacman-s git. Yeah, it's already installed, but let me reinstall it again. Okay, Git is now installed, and now I can clone the repository. Let's clear the terminal and enter the command with git clone https://gitlab.com Stefan Rabe. Let's cd into the queue into the my Qtile dotfiles, my Qtile dotfiles.git. You see, that was the name of the repository, and with .git I can now clone that repository. I have to enter my username because it's a private repository. And now it's cloned. When I now look into the folder, you see that there is a new folder, my Qtile dotfiles. I can now here create, for example, a new file with touch test.txt. I can open the file with Vim. I can enter something. This is a text. I save that file. And now with git status, I can see that there's a change in a file. There's a new file, test.txt, and I need to add this file now to the repository. To do this, I enter the command git add test.txt with git status. You see that the new file test.txt is now staged and ready for a commit. Let's commit the current status of that changes with git commit -m for a message, new update. And now I can push this change to the remote repository. Let's do this with git push. Again, I need to enter my credentials. And you see now here is the test.txt file. But we don't want to add the files now here for testing. We want to back up and to save our configurations from our .config folder on this repository. We do not store the .config folder completely on GitLab, because not everything what is in here I want to have in my repository. Yeah, I only want to have now, in my case, the folder Qtile, then Alacrity, Rofi, so my core applications on GitLab. Let's start with Qtile. We need now to copy the folder Qtile into the folder my Qtile dotfiles with copy -r Qtile into the my Qtile dotfiles folder. Let's switch again into the my Qtile config folder. And you see we have here now the new Qtile folder and the test.txt. Let's remove that test.txt and commit this to the repository. with git status, I can check that there is a deletion of the test.txt and a new folder, Qtile. To stage all changes that I have done since the last commit to the repository, I can enter git add dot. With git status, I can see that I've now staged all changes here for the next commit. And I will do this now with git commit -m up at Qtile. And I can, with git push, transfer these changes to the repository. Now we have here the Qtile folder and the test.txt file is gone. Now, of course, this situation now is a bit uncomfortable because every time I change something in the Qtile folder, in the .config folder, to enable changes to my configuration, I have to copy the changes to my repository folder, my Qtile dotfiles, and then commit it again. What I want to do is to work directly in the my Qtile dotfiles folder and create a symbolic link from this folder into the config folder. And this is my way how I work with my dotfiles. And then I have the full control what is in my repository folder and what is in the .config folder. Let's do this. Let's cd into the .config folder and remove now the Qtile folder. So the Qtile folder is now gone, but you know, I have a copy in the my Qtile dotfiles folder. And now I create a symbolic link, ln-s from the my Qtile dotfiles folder, the Qtile folder into the .config folder. With ls-al, you get a detailed list of the content of the .config folder. And you see here that there is now here a new symbolic link. Here is a virtual Qtile folder with a reference to the my Qtile dotfiles/Qtiles folder. And now I can do the following. If I want to change something, I will not work in the .config folder anymore. I will work now in the my Qtile dotfiles folder. So let's open again the folder Qtile and change something in the config.py. For example, let's increase the margin between the windows from 10 to, let me say, 30, that you can see something. So with super key Control R, I reload the file and you see it's working. I have now a gap of 30 between the windows and have changed the file in the my Qtile dotfiles folder only and not in the .config folder. And that means I can now commit these changes directly to the repository. Let's cd back into the folder with git status. You can see that there is a change. The Qtile config.py is now there. The PyCache folder is just a temporary folder generated from Python. I will git add the changes now, all changes, and these are now staged with, I can check this with git status again, and I can git commit -m updates, or let's better name more gaps. And now I can push it back with git push. Username, password. Yeah, and the changes have been moved to the GitLab. So let's check it. Here is more gaps, and you see here the config. And let's scroll down, and here is the margin of 30. And this is a way that you can implement for all other configurations, for Rofi, for Dunst, so for Alacrity configurations. It's always the same. So, and that means you can also clone this repository to other machines, yeah, and use it. This is relatively easy. The only thing that you have to do is, of course, to create that symbolic links manually, and this can also be done with a script. Let's create a file with vim install.sh, and here I can add the command for the symbolic link. In bash, I create a bash file, and then I can enter the command again with ln-s my Qtile dotfiles /Qtile to the folder .config. I can save the file with change mod plus x install. I make this file executable, and let's push this again to the repository. And here's the installation script. And now you can, for example, on another machine, on a laptop, download, clone this repository to your laptop, remove the folder from the .config and run the installation script, and then all your setup should be done automatically. Maybe a reboot is required, or of course reload the configuration, but this should it be. Let me show you a little trick to make your life easier, because you have seen that I have a lot to type at the moment. And this is what I want to change now. Let's cd into the home folder with ls-lal. You see that there's a .bashrc file, and here I can add an alias for several Git commands. Let's open it with vim.bashrc, and I will create an alias. Git aliases. Alias, for example, git add is equals git add. GP is git push. Alias gs git status, and the alias gc stands for git commit. Okay, let's give it a try. Let's close the terminal and open it again. Let's cd into the my.files. With gs, you see that there are no changes at the moment. We are here up to date on our main branch. Let's make a change. With cd Qtile, vim config.py. Let's change it back to 10, the margins, close it, git status. And now here is the change. With git add dot, I add this change to the stages. Then with gc updates, I commit the change. And with gp, I can push the changes to the repository. Much faster, right? Now it's fun to work with Git, right? So currently only I can access the repository and can clone it from my GitLab server. But if you want to publish this repository and make it available for everyone, you can open here Settings, General, expand the Visibility Project Features and Permissions tab, and change from private to public. There are a lot of settings to manage your permissions, but this is normally the only thing that you need. And when you now go back to the repository overview, you can see that this log symbol is gone and everyone can now use your dotfiles if you like it. What I normally do is to add always a private repository where only I can have access to. And here I can, for example, store my private scripts that only I want to use, for example, to launch my virtual machine with my setup on my computer, a OneDrive access link or YouTube access data, or everything that you do not want to share with everyone else in the world can be managed and stored in a private repository. Every time when I have implemented some more core features to my dotfiles, I create a release. Yeah? And you can do this by opening the tab Deploy and click here on Release. I create here my first release. I have to define a tag name. The tag name could be, for example, the version 1.0. I save it and I enter here the release version 1.0 name. Here is a description of all my changes. And I can create the release now. And now you have here a release created where your users can download all files in a zip file. You can access the release here in that navigation. You see there's one release available. And you have also access directly to the code just by opening here that menu and select here the tag 1. And then you see all the files from this version. And this is great if you're adding more and more features to your dotfiles but want to keep a dedicated timestamp of an older version. And you have always access to it. Now I'm here on another system and I want now to get the updated dotfiles on this device, and I can do this again with git clone with gitlab.com/Stefan-Rabe/my qtile.files.git. I clone the folders into a new folder, my qtile.files on this device with ls. I can see now here is Alacrity, Dunst, and Qtile configurations. When I now change the files on this other computer, I can do this, of course, with vim install. I can add, for example, another symbolic link, and with gs, you see that there is now a change. The install.sh has been modified. With git add dot, I added this for the next commit, update, and with git push, I can push it from this device also to my repository. So that means I can work on two devices on the same dotfiles. Now I switch back to Qtile. And I want to update the repository on this device with the updates that I made on the other system. I can do this with the command git pull. And you see when I now open the install file, you see here is my second symbolic link command. With that workflow, you can work on several machines on the same dotfiles that are hosted on GitLab or GitHub and keep all your configurations synchronized on all of your devices. And this is my workflow. And that's it. This is my workflow with Git and GitLab. And as said at the beginning, it also works with GitHub. And isn't it great how easy it is to share Linux learnings experiences with others, I can only encourage you to do this as well. And with that, see you next time.